If you're an adult with ADHD, whether you got diagnosed as a child or diagnosed in your 50s like me, there are 4 fundamental habits that you are probably exhibiting that's making your life a lot harder. And in today's video, I want to go through what those habits are, talk about why they're making your life so hard, and how you can go about changing them to just have more ease and lightness and enjoy life a little bit more. Like, how awesome would that be? But if you're new here, my name is Karen McGill. I'm an ADHD coach and creator, and I'm here for the busy, ambitious brains who want to have a great life, but they've got these 4 pesky little habits that's holding them back until today. So let's get into it. Okay, guys, this is not just another listicle video. These 4 habits really are something that I've noticed in myself, and I've noticed in my clients, and you're probably gonna recognize at least several of them in yourself as well. And I always think self-awareness is the first step towards transformation. So let's dive in with the first one. And that is this habit of assuming that there's certain things in your life you can't do because of your ADHD. And I'll give you an example. A little while ago, I was doing a group coaching program, and one of the clients in my group was a doctor, and she was talking about her self-care habits. And she was saying, I want to get out and walk every day out for at least 10 minutes, but ADHD can't get it done. And she went on with whatever she was saying. And I had to pause for a moment and think to myself, she just said that she couldn't go out and walk because of her ADHD. And she is a smart woman. I know that logically she doesn't believe that, but at a subconscious level, that was a story she was telling herself. Whenever we say things sort of off the cuff or on a whim, there's generally some subconscious root to whatever it is that we just said. And in some way, subconsciously, she was holding a belief that her ADHD was getting in the way of her being able to take care of herself. And I see this across the board. I can't do my taxes or clean my house or carry on a happy romantic relationship, all these different things because of my ADHD. And those, again, are stories that we're telling ourselves. There's really nothing that an ADHD couldn't accomplish that a neurotypical could accomplish. We might have to go about it in a different way. It might take us longer, it might take more energy, but really, like from a diagnostic standpoint, there's nothing we cannot do. So any of these subconscious beliefs that we have that our ADHD is just holding us back and therefore we have a ticket to not even try, that is such a disservice to yourself, because there's probably a lot of things that you want to do in your life that you have this belief around, my ADHD holds me back from this, so I'm just not even going to try. I would love for you to give that a check. Be conscious about when you say those sort of things and break that habit as soon as you can, because that is holding you back in more ways than one. Okay, the next habit that I think all ADHDers really need to be conscious about breaking is giving far too much airtime to the mistakes we made, the flunders that we experienced, or the relationships that we feel like we screwed up. Wherever we feel like we screw up, that becomes a dominant thought in our mind. And there's a reason for it. It's called the negative cognitive bias, and our brains are wired for negativity because that keeps us safe, or at least it used to. But what it does for us today is create negative loops that we can't get out of, and we start ruminating. And when those thoughts are going off in our head, it sets off a chemical cascade in our body. So negative thoughts firing in our neural pathways, which means we're elevating our cortisol and norepinephrine and adrenaline. Meanwhile, we're reducing our dopamine and serotonin. So as our thoughts continue to ruminate on the negative, our chemical balance is continuing to drop in a less and less favorable way. And not only does that make everything harder to do, it also feels really crappy. Think about it. When your dopamine and serotonin levels are lower, nothing feels good. You don't feel happy. You just feel either numb or a little sad. Meanwhile, you also have these stress chemicals which are starting to increase, which not only adds to that feeling of stress and malaise in your body, but also has long-term physical consequences. So I paint that picture for you to help you understand the long-term impacts of being highly prone to negative rumination. And I'm not suggesting that we should flip that on its head and only think about the positives in life. What I am suggesting, though, is what if you paid attention to the amount of airtime you were giving negative thoughts in your mind and had a contract with yourself that for every negative thought, you would have to counterbalance it with a positive thought. If all of the time that you spent in your head had to be balanced 50-50 between the negative and the positive, it would make the world of difference, because nobody wants to ruminate on the negative. It's just that those are well-worn neural pathways for us, and it takes some effort to consciously do the reverse. And while obviously we can't perfectly balance our thoughts in our mind 50-50, at the very least, we can become more conscious of when we are ruminating and say to ourselves in those moments as a pattern interrupt, okay, this is my negative thought that I'm thinking about, and I'm not going to try and push it down or pretend it doesn't exist, but what is the opposite of that that is also true? And as you start to counterbalance the negative with things that are positive and also true, at least you're going to start interrupting those neural pathways so your brain isn't constantly ruminating on the negative. And the more you can bring in the positive, you're at the very least going to neutralize your thoughts and your self-concept, making everything a lot easier. Because when you think that I'm a failure, everything I do is a failure, everything I do blows up, or it's wrong, or it's bad, when you have those thoughts and then you have the chemical cascade that follows, of course it's going to make all of those things so much more likelier to happen. But if you at least have a neutral frame of, I'm going to try this thing that I've never done before, I have no idea how it's going to pan out, but at the very least, I trust myself to try, and whatever happens, happens. That's going to make everything so much easier. It's going to make life on the inside, like your internal weather, so much better. Trust me on this. So the next time you have that rumination going in your mind, pattern interrupt and ask yourself, what about this is also true that's positive? What is the opposite of this that is also true and unarguable? And if you can do that, you will start to feel like this neutralizing sense of your brain calming down and your chemical cascade not being quite so imbalanced. Okay. Habit number 3, and this is something that took me to about age 53 to even figure out, much less try to work on changing it. And that is this habit we all have, and this is true, I think, of most people, this habit of believing that whatever answer we need to any question is out there and not in here. Whether it's what to have for dinner, who to marry, whether or not to have kids, should you take the job or not take the job, should you move to the new state or not, any of those questions, we have a tendency to seek answers outwardly. So Google, ChatGPT, the people around us, always looking for someone else's perspective or opinion or their judgment on what they think we should do. I have now come to realize that is the worst thing we could do for ourselves and the exact opposite way of finding the right answers for you. All of the answers to all of our questions are within. It's great to learn from other people and understand other people's perspectives and gather as much information as we can, but it has to stop there. Because if we can't go inward and really understand what our body is saying to us about any given decision, then we will never know the right answer. And that skill starts with creating a language between your mind and your body. And it's a very easy thing to do. It is not woo-woo, trust me on this. Just relax, take a deep breath, get into your body, and ask your body 2 questions. The first one is, what is a resounding yes feel like in my body? Show me what yes feels like and let it come up. So when I ask that question of myself, I get warmth and tingling right here in my heart center. That is my language. And then ask yourself, what is a resounding no? What does no feel like in my body? And if I think about a no, it starts to feel like a gut response, right? Like almost like a dread. For some folks, it might be that you lean in more if it's a yes, or you lean away if it's a no, or you feel contracted if it's a no, and you feel expanded if it's a yes. It doesn't matter what your language is. It only matters that it feels right to you. And once you have that language, you can literally ask yourself anything. Again, there's nothing wrong with getting clarity from other people or doing your research and due diligence, but the answers to all of your questions have to come from inside. Otherwise, you are simply reacting to life. You are letting life show you where you need to go next, rather than you deciding intentionally and deliberately where you want to go. So that is the difference between a life lived by intention and design versus a life where you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off, always feeling overwhelmed and disappointed and just feeling like it doesn't look or feel like the life you should be living. And then the last habit, which is something I am still working on myself, and I see this in every ADHD across the board. We never consciously complete things before we move on to something else. In fact, those two actions are completely separate. Our brains are wired for novelty, right? So we're always looking for new things. We're always picking up new ideas, projects, to-dos, whatever, right? Like that is something we probably will always do. But what happens when we pick it up and we bring it into our cognitive space, our physical space, anything like that? We end up with clutter and chaos. And we might work on things or pay attention to things for a little while, and then we'll drop them and move to the next thing when the novelty wears off and it gets boring. And what happens is we may come back to that thing at some other point, but when we leave it, we don't fully leave it because we take the shame and guilt associated with dropping things and moving on to other things with us, which creates such a heaviness in our self-concept and in our emotional self because we're constantly going through life with this heaviness of I start things and I never finish them. That's what I do. Again, that negative rumination piece where we could simply stop doing something and either say to ourselves, this is complete for now, or it's not complete, but I feel complete with it. I need to move on now. I might come back to it if I have to, or if I feel like it. But if I don't feel like it and I don't have to, I am happy to just call this complete, whatever that is, and move on to the next thing. As long as you have in your mind a moment where you say to yourself, I am complete with this and I'm not going to feel guilty about moving on. And if you do feel guilty, take that as a cue to explore, why am I leaving this? Am I leaving it too early? And is there a way that I could make it novel again so that I can either complete it because I have to or complete it because I want to? In that very moment, when we decide to drop something like a hot potato and move on, if we could just pause in that moment and consciously decide whether we're leaving it entirely for good or just till later and not bring the emotion with us, it would just make everything so much lighter. Don't you think? I have been personally working on that one a lot. So especially at work, when I'm working on something on one screen and then I jump over to something else, I'm just trying to pause and give myself that moment to say, this might not be fully done, but as far as I'm concerned, it's complete. And now I'm going to close out that tab rather than keeping it there because 2 days later, I'm going to come back to it and wonder what the hell it was anyways. So to give myself that ceremonious moment of closing the tab and not having to have that thing be part of my cognitive space anymore, such a big difference. So anyways, those are the 4 habits that I see across the board with ADHD adults and in myself. And I have been working very hard at breaking those habits so that I can feel lighter, so that things can feel easier and I can just have a better go at life. So I hope that I have inspired you in some way to start thinking about those habits in your own life. And if you do decide to work on one, please let me know what it is in the comments below. Thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye for now.